Hello, you're watching the business headlines on HW News with me, Ali Azhar. India's short-lived stint as the world's fifth largest economy is over. Deteriorating macroeconomic conditions such as a slowing GDP growth rate and a weak rupee were chief culprits for dragging our economy to 7th position in the new pecking order, according to a World Bank report. Earlier, data had shown that India had become the fifth largest economy in the world in 2017 by displacing the UK and France, which then occupied 6th and 7th place respectively. According to World Bank data in 2017, the size of India's economy was $2.65 trillion, followed by the UK, whose economy stood at $2.64 trillion, and France at $2.59 trillion. However, this status was short-lived and the tables have turned rapidly on India as the UK's economy grew to $2.82 trillion and the French economy expanded to $2.78 trillion, while the Indian economy could only manage to grow to $2.73 trillion by 2018. Economists are mainly attributing this to a movement of the Indian rupee against the dollar and saying that while in 2017 the rupee appreciated 3% against the dollar, in 2018 it depreciated 5% against the greenback. And they say it is this reason why India's economy was able to grow at 15.72% in dollar terms in 2017 and clock in a mere 3.01% growth in dollar terms in 2018. Putting the blame on currency fluctuation is one thing, but the rupee doesn't just depreciate against the dollar by chance. Economic policies, export policies, inflation, and general business environment all play a part when a currency depreciates or appreciates against another. At the risk of sounding repetitive, we all know by now that India is in the midst of a slowdown. And while a slowing world economy may have contributed to it, it is mainly due to domestic policies implemented by the government, who don't seem to understand the magnitude of the slowdown and are not even willing to acknowledge it. Instead of biting the bullet and implementing some tough policy actions in the budget, all the government seems to be interested in doing is raising taxes in order to collect more revenue. But don't they understand that by arbitrarily raising taxes, they are forcing big business and foreign capital out of the country? Let us now take a look at few headline macro indicators which will prove our deteriorating state of affairs. GDP is at a 5-year low, fresh investments are at a 15-year low, unemployment is at a 45-year high, growth in gross tax collections are at a 10-year low, which reflects a decline in corporate profits. Further, core sector growth is at a 4-year low, auto sales are at a 2-decade low, exports are railing big time, consumption and demand are at multi-year lows. And the proof of the pudding lies in the fact that stock markets have wiped off $200 billion in market cap after the budget on 5th July, increased taxes and offered little stimulus to revive a sagging growth. And in the midst of all this drama comes the narrative that India is aiming to be a $5 trillion economy by 2025 and plans to displace Japan in the rankings by then. According to the economic survey which was presented a day prior to the budget, India needs to grow at 12%, not considering inflation, to achieve this target. And if things keep progressing the way they have been, it's hard to see us going up in the rankings and easy to see us slipping further. We now tune in to our business and finance editor, Mr. Akhilesh Bhargav, to understand what he makes of the situation. Over to you, sir.
It was last year that the BJP very jubilantly announced that India, under the leadership of Mr. Narendra Modi, has now become the 5th largest economy in the world. It was based on statistics for the year 2017, when India very narrowly went past the UK economy. India in 2017 in dollar terms achieved a GDP size of $2.65 trillion and the UK was just behind by $2.64 trillion. In 2018, this has got reversed and the news comes that as per the 2018 figures, that is measuring the GDP in dollar terms, India has fallen down from number 5 to number 7. Of course, the BJP is silent this time, but the figures say that with a better growth and with a depreciation of the Indian currency, UK and France are now ahead of India and we are number 7. So as per the 2018 figures, the UK economy is at number 5 again with an economy size of $2.82 trillion. France has an economy size of $2.78 trillion and India is left behind with an economy size of $2.72 trillion. The reality is that it is because of India's growth rate falling down in dollar terms in the year 2018 that our ranking in dollar terms has come down. The other issue is that the Indian currency has depreciated such that when you measure the size of the GDP, our GDP has been relegated. The question is, will the Prime Minister's target of 2025, India achieving a $5 trillion economy, be met? With very challenging global trade, thanks to the Trump-induced trade wars and the global economy decelerating, the question remains, will we grow? Because our growth rate will have to be in the range of 12% a year in rupee terms. In other words, 4% inflation, 8% growth rate, and that will take us to a $5 trillion economy in 2025, such that we overtake Japan also and get up in the world rankings. We think while it is possible, because France and UK are very export-oriented economies, and with global trade going down, their growth rate should not be as good as ours, because we have a huge domestic economy to look after. But that will depend on whether the Indian government is initiating the right reforms and policies in order to achieve a faster growth rate just by meeting the domestic demand of the economy. And if India also gets its act correct and its exports catch up in order to capture all those areas which are now being vacated by Chinese exports because of the US tariffs, then we should be able to achieve the $5 trillion target. But as of now, we are no longer 5th, we are number 7 in the world global rankings. And it's time that the BJP accepted. Just as last year they came out with their jubilation, this year they need to come out to say it's a matter of worry and let us get our act together.
Just when we thought that the trade war between the world's two largest economies was dying down, considering that its leaders Donald Trump and Xi Jinping met at the G20 summit at the end of June and agreed to a ceasefire, that ceasefire has not happened, and in fact it has escalated. Trump, via a series of tweets, said he plans to impose a 10% tariff on $300 billion of Chinese imports from September onwards, and could raise tariffs further if the Chinese president fails to move quickly and strike a trade deal. This statement marks an abrupt end to the temporary truce between the two nations. Let us recall that the US has already imposed tariffs of 25% on $250 billion worth of Chinese imports into the US. This news didn't go down very well with the US stock markets, which took a beating. Oil prices plummeted 7%, with Brent crude registering its biggest daily percentage drop since February of 2016. This happened because the escalated trade war will have an impact on the global economy, which will now grow at a slower pace and will therefore consume less oil in the bargain. These new tariffs may also force the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates again to protect the US economy. On July 31st, the Fed cut interest rates by a quarter percentage point, the first reduction since 2008. In retaliation, China said it would take countermeasures, and a spokesperson at the Foreign Ministry said that China does not want a trade war with the US, but was not afraid of fighting one. While this may have been a face-saving comment, the fact is that the US imports much more goods from China than China does from the US. Therefore, the US always has the upper hand when it comes to negotiations, and China, in effect, is left to the mercy of a man that is hell-bent on putting them down. Thank you for watching HW News. This is me signing off. Have a great day.